Hello everybody and welcome to another video. Today I've got, I guess, what could be considered a list video for you guys. I'm going to be talking about some albums that I would give a 10 out of 10 rating. This is actually a video I've thought about doing for quite a long time. I wanted to do something like this sometime last year. I can't remember exactly when. But I was way more lenient on it than I am now. I had like 30 albums, roughly, maybe 30 to 40 albums that I had listed as being 10 out of 10. I was not necessarily less critical or more critical now than I was then or anything like that. I just thought about it some more. I just picked the ones that I would give a 10 out of 10, which was way less than the original list I had. I do have 16 albums here, actually. A few of them I'm not going to dwell on for too long. And this video was inspired by some other videos. Originally, Monica LW did a video similar to this a long while back, and then Zach D also did one recently. That kind of made me start thinking about doing this kind of video again, so I thought it would be interesting to do this video. So, first thing I'm going to get out of the way is there is, of course, like I said before, there was a bunch of albums that I ended up leaving out. There's a lot of great albums that I would give like a 9, 9.5 that I did consider putting on this list, but I just didn't. I think they're absolutely fantastic albums, but I wouldn't say they're quite a 10 out of 10. They're very close, but they don't quite reach that. So as some examples, I've got Extremist by Demon Hunter, Pure Holocaust by Immortal, Rust in Peace by Megadeth, The Satanist by Behemoth, From Hell with Love by Beast in Black, Heroes and the Art of War by Sabaton, the self-titled Power Slave and Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden, and 5x5 by Wolves at the Gate. Those aren't all of the albums necessarily that I would say are close to being a 10 out of 10, but they are ones that I just kind of thought of as examples. And then also, this is kind of going to be a two-part sort of thing, so it's like, there's, it looks like 9, I want to say, albums that I would say are like a light 10 out of 10. So that's kind of like, I wouldn't say they're like an absolute like strong 10 out of 10. They're not as good as some of the other albums that I have listed here, but they are ones that I would still consider a 10 out of 10, even though they're not like as strong. But I just wanted to kind of put that out there. I'll go over those ones first, and then the strong, like the really strong 10 out of 10s that I'm like, yes, that is absolutely a 10 out of 10, I will be talking about later on. So I guess we'll just get started. So like I said earlier, there's going to be a couple of these I'm not going to talk about for too long, so I'll start with those. First up, I have both albums by the band Galactic Empire. As of right now, they only have 2 albums out. Galactic Empire is a band that does like metal covers of Star Wars music, me being a huge Star Wars fan and a huge fan of the music of Star Wars as well. I really enjoy these albums, and the main reason why I put them in the light 10 out of 10 area is because I really just don't listen to them that much, and even though they are fantastic, that's just not something I go back to all the time. But I do really enjoy both of the albums. They have 2 of them, like I said, they have self-titled, and then they have one called Episode 2. I do personally prefer the self-titled, but that's only because of the song choices. I think the quality of the albums is pretty much equal other than that. But yeah, there's Galactic Empire, both of their albums. And then I also have the soundtrack for the 2016 Doom video game by Mick Gordon. Soundtracks I enjoy, I don't listen to them a whole lot. I listen to them like while I'm studying or something like that, but I don't really listen to them in my everyday life, I guess you could say. But the Doom soundtrack is one exception. I do actually listen to this quite often. It is probably the most metal soundtrack I have ever heard in my life. It's just really, really well done, and even though, yes, it is a soundtrack, but it really enhances the game. I haven't played a whole lot of the 2016 Doom game, but I have enjoyed what I have played. Music in and of itself is just really good, and it fits right in if you're just listening to other metal bands and stuff. So, yeah, definitely give that a listen. It's a really fantastic album. The main reason it's under the lighter 10 out of 10s is because there's some songs on it that are, of course, more just kind of ambient sort of sounds they're not really songs, and so those ones aren't really worth going back to at all. They work fine if you just listen to the whole soundtrack. You know, they're nothing to come back to, so that's pretty much why it's there. The next one I have is Time 1 by Wintersun. This is, in my opinion, Wintersun's best album. I do really enjoy it a lot. I don't go back to it a whole lot these days, at least. Great songs. There's only, I think, a few songs on here. There's like a couple instrumentals and then a few like actual like songs with vocals and stuff. So it is a great album, great compositions. I love the kind of orchestra synth backing it has. If you listen to that like by itself, because you can find that by itself on YouTube, it's really good. It sounds really nice. A lot of great guitar riffs, the vocal performance is great. It's just a fantastic album, and I really enjoy it a lot. I'm very excited for whenever Time 2 comes out. And yeah, the next one is Innocence and Instinct by Red. Now, I'm just going to say this is not the last time, or the only time rather, that Red is going to appear on this list. I do have Innocence and Instinct in the light 10 out of 10s. The main reason it's in the light 10 out of 10s is because there's just a couple of songs that I don't really go back to a whole lot, even though I do think they are very good. Plus, Innocence and Instinct I think is better when it comes to just listening to individual songs rather than being one whole album, one whole listening experience, which to me that's something that I value a little bit more, not like a huge amount more, but a little bit more. But Innocence and Instinct is definitely one of their best albums. It's really fantastic, a lot of really great songs on it. Some of my all-time favorite Red songs, of course, are on this album. It's just really good. It's got great vocals, great lyrics, great performances for drumming and the guitars and everything. It's just an all-around great rock album, and one that I would highly recommend if you have not heard it. They're easily the best modern rock band out there, if you ask me. And yeah, the next one I actually debated on putting a couple of the ones that are from now on in the strong 10 out of 10s, but I decided not to. And this is one of those albums, and that is Careless Rex by Sabaton. I mean, Sabaton is one of my all-time favorite bands. This is my favorite album by them. In my opinion, they've never really released a bad album or even a mediocre album, although a couple of their older albums like Metalizer and Atero Dominatus I think are probably their weakest material in my opinion. They are still very good, but it's really just choosing one of several fantastic albums. The reason this is in the light 10 out of 10s rather than the strong 10 out of 10s, while all of the songs are fantastic listening to the album beginning to end, there are one or two that I don't really go back too much outside of that, like Killing Ground and The Carolean's Prayer. I think those are great songs when you listen to them within the whole album, but by themselves I just don't go back to them that much. But it is fantastic. It is a great album. A lot of my favorite Sabaton songs are on here again. Next up is Phantom Anthem by August Burns Red. This is probably my favorite metalcore album ever, I guess, although it is hard to say. I mean, Phantom Anthem is fantastic. Rescue and Restore by August Burns Red is also fantastic. Extremist by Demon Hunter. All three of As I Lie Dying's latest albums, An Ocean Between Us, Powerless Rise, and Awakened, are all fantastic. So it is hard to say, but when I have to choose one, I typically go with Phantom Anthem, and I do think it is certainly a 10 out of 10. There are one or two songs that I don't go back to a whole lot, mainly Generations and Lifeline, but other than that, they are still great songs. There's no bad songs on the album, you know, all that kind of stuff. So it is a fantastic album, some of the band's best work in my opinion. Next up, I've got The Alliance by Psypcore. Now, this was my favorite album of last year, and I still stand by that. I still love this album. I did also consider putting this in the strong 10 out of 10s, but I decided not to. Again, the main reason for that was, while I think every song works fine, listening to the album beginning to end, again, there is one or two that I don't go back to that much. The main one that sticks out to me for that, or the main two, I guess, are Dissatisfactory and Remembrance. I just don't go back to those ones a whole lot, but they are still great songs, and this is one of the most underrated bands that I have really heard in quite a while. They are thankfully gaining a little bit more popularity since the beginning of last year, which is awesome because they're a great band. I really, really hope that these guys get bigger because they certainly deserve it. They make some really fantastic music. Yeah, this album's full of a bunch of great songs. I've gone back to it pretty consistently ever since it came out way back in February of 2018 or something like that. It's one that I've listened to consistently since it came out, and I just really like it. And this is going to be the final album for my light 10 out of 10s, I guess, and that is At the Heart of Winter by Immortal. Again, I did consider having this in the strong 10 out of 10s, but I decided not to, again, for much the same reasons as every other album I've said this about. Every song is great listening to the album beginning to end, but there are one or two that I just don't go back to that much. Mainly Years of Silent Sorrow and Tragedies Blows at Horizon. However, this album also has some of Immortal's absolute best songs on it. Withstand the Fall of Time, the opening track, is possibly my favorite black metal song. Great song overall. The second song, Solar Fall, is also fantastic, and the title track is also really great. This album is really great for kind of a gateway into black metal if you're not a fan of it. I think this is a great album to listen to, and the band as a whole, really. It's just a great album, you know. The vocals, while they did take some time for me to get used to when I first became a fan of the band, I do think this is a pretty good vocal performance. The lyrics are great. The riffs on this album is like a riff powerhouse. There are so many fantastic riffs on this album, and that is like the biggest reason I like it, is some of the riffs are really great. But it's just a really fantastic album overall. I would say it's probably my favorite black metal album, although there are a couple black metal albums in my strong 10 out of 10s that, you know, based on this would seem that I prefer them. It really is hard to say what my favorite is, but this is definitely up there. And now we're going to move on to the strong 10 out of 10s. Looks like 7 albums for this. I've tried to go through it fairly quickly. I realize this video is probably getting kind of long by now. I'm going to start off with probably the most obvious one for anybody who knows me, I guess, and that is Winter's Gate by Insomnium. I'm not going to spend much time on this because I've already talked about this album extensively. It is probably my favorite album. It's hard to say, but every time I listen to it, I just love it. It's the only album out of all of these that I would probably say I would consider at least perfect, like absolutely perfect. There's nothing about the album that I dislike. While there are certainly other albums on this list that I think are very, very close, there's still like some very minor things that I just think hold them back just enough for me to not say that they're perfect. But I would say that Winter's Gate is, in my opinion, a perfect album. You can disagree if you want, that's fine, but to me, I just love it. Every time I listen to it, I just really enjoy it, and yeah. And then next up, we've got a pretty recent release, actually, which is Empath by Devin Townsend. This one I did actually consider having in the light 10 out of 10s, actually, because to be quite honest, there are some songs on here that I really just don't go back to that much, but then I think, you know, listening to the album beginning to end is for sure the best way to listen to it, I think. And while there are a couple of songs on here that I think work fine just by themselves, that is absolutely the best way to listen to the album. And when I listen to the album beginning to end, I just love it. It's a lot of variety, a lot of different influence from different styles, not even within just metal, but within music as a whole. And I just really love how it kind of takes elements from all these different things and puts it all together and ends up being a great album. So yeah, I really like everything. The compositions are great, the performances are great, the vocals are great. Everything about this album is just really great, and I enjoy it a lot. Next up, these are the other two black metal albums that I mentioned earlier that I would give strong 10 out of 10s. And this includes the most recent release on this whole list, being one album that's, you know, of course a little older, but then also one that came out literally a few weeks ago, maybe a little less than that, and that is Liturgia and Panihida by the band Batushka. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing any of those right. I know I'm pronouncing Batushka right, but yeah, I love these albums. They're really fantastic. These guys started out as, you know, they were an underground black metal band, of course, but then they released their debut album, Liturgia, and not necessarily within metal as a whole, but within the black metal community, it blew up. It is a fantastic album. They've gotten quite a few fans from it, and to this day, I think it has at least, the entire album has at least 3 million views on YouTube. I can't remember exactly, but it has at least 3 million, which for a black metal album, and an underground black metal album at that is a lot of views. So yeah, it's a great album. Liturgia is a fantastic album, and as is Panihida. It's kind of a weird one because there's a lot of controversy surrounding this band and court-related stuff. The original creator of the band kicked out the vocalist who he brought in on their debut album just to record vocals. He wrote all of the music, and so he brought in the vocalist, and then the vocalist wanted to pressure the original creator into releasing their second album earlier than it would be ready for, and he didn't do that, so the vocalist left the band, trademarked the band under his own name, scheduled a bunch of shows, and announced a new album, which was not great. He literally stole the band from the original creator. So that new album is coming out, I believe, in July. I'll probably still check it out, but based on the singles, it doesn't seem anywhere near as good as Panihida, which is the album that was released by the original creator. So there's a lot of crazy stuff surrounding this band. A lot of people are very upset about it. But hopefully that all gets resolved. But anyways, both fantastic black metal albums, very unique sound. One of the most unique black metal bands I've really ever heard. And yeah, really fantastic. And next up, I've got Seventh Son of a Seventh Son by Iron Maiden. Now, I did mention, of course, there were some Iron Maiden albums that I had in my honorable mentions, I guess you could say, but I had to include Seventh Son because it is just a great album. No bad songs on it. I enjoy it every time I listen to it. A lot of great riffs, a lot of the vocals are fantastic, and all of that kind of stuff. It's just a really great album overall. And definitely listen to it if you haven't heard it, because it is really, really fantastic. Next one I've got is another Red album, which is Of Beauty and Rage. Now, the reason I included this in my strong 10 out of 10s rather than the light 10 out of 10s like I did Innocence Instinct is because Of Beauty and Rage, I think, works fantastic as one entire album, one entire listening experience, and of course the songs by themselves are also really great. That's the main reason I included it. It's just a really fantastic album. In my opinion, it's also their best album. And then finally, the last album that I'm going to talk about is Mirror Reaper by Bell Witch. This is, so far, one of the very few doom metal albums that I've actually listened to. I'm usually not a huge fan of doom metal. It's very hit or miss for me. But this is a really fantastic album. It's like 80 minutes long, which is kind of insane, so it does take some patience to sit through. But it is a fantastic album for sure, and I really enjoy listening to it when I am actually able to sit down and listen to the entire thing. Great, really great everything. It's not an album that's like super technical, it's not real complex in terms of the songwriting, you know, there's no crazy riffs or anything because it is a very slow paced, more focused on feeling, atmosphere, emotion, and that kind of thing that they just put all together. So it's not like a super complexly written album, but it is very, very good. I do really enjoy listening to it. So that's pretty much it for this video. Let me know what you guys think. What are some albums you guys would give a 10 out of 10? Do you agree or disagree with any of my picks? All that sort of stuff. And that is pretty much it for this video, so I will see you guys next time.